The morning sun rose over New Soul Colony, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange. Miho stood at the tram station platform, coffee in hand, watching the city wake up around him. He had been a transportation engineer on Kepler 442b for 3 years now, and he thought he had seen everything this colony world could offer. He was wrong. The Line 7 tram arrived exactly at 6:47 a.m., just like it did every morning. Miho stepped inside, ready for another routine day of checking rails and maintaining the city's transport system. But something caught his eye immediately. There, sitting on the blue plastic seat near the window, was a creature that shouldn't exist. A dragon hatchling, no bigger than a house cat, sat perfectly still. Its scales shimmered like oil on water, shifting between deep blue and brilliant silver. 2 tiny wings were folded against its back, and a long tail curled around its feet. The creature's eyes were the most striking feature, large and golden, with a depth that suggested intelligence far beyond any animal Miho had ever seen. The hatchling turned its head and looked directly at him. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Those golden eyes held something ancient, something that made Miho's heart race with a feeling he couldn't explain. Then the creature turned back to the window, watching the city pass by as if this was the most normal thing in the world. Miho sat down across from it, trying not to stare. Other passengers barely seemed to notice the dragon. An elderly woman read her tablet. A young man listened to music through his earbuds. A mother held her sleeping child. None of them paid attention to the impossible creature sitting among them. "Does anyone else see that?" Miho asked quietly. The elderly woman looked up. "See what, dear?" The dragon. Right there." She glanced at the seat, smiled politely, and went back to her reading. "You work too hard, young man. Get some rest." Miho rubbed his eyes. Maybe he was seeing things. He had been pulling double shifts lately, upgrading the tram's power systems. But no. The dragon was still there, as solid and real as anything else in the tram. The hatchling rode the tram for exactly 12 stops. At Central Station, it stood up, stretched its tiny wings, and walked toward the door with surprising grace. As the doors opened, it hopped down to the platform and disappeared into the crowd of morning commuters. The next morning, Miho arrived at the station early. At 6:47 a.m., the tram arrived. The dragon was already inside, sitting in the same seat. This time, Miho sat right next to it. The creature acknowledged him with a slight tilt of its head, then returned to watching the city through the window. This pattern continued for 2 weeks. Every morning, the dragon rode the tram. Every morning, Miho sat beside it. And every morning, no one else seemed to care or even notice the extraordinary passenger in their midst. Miho started taking notes. The dragon never ate, never made a sound, never bothered anyone. It simply rode the tram, always the same route, always getting off at Central Station. But where did it go after that? On the 15th day, Miho decided to follow it. When the dragon hopped off the tram at Central Station, he followed at a distance. The creature moved through the busy station with purpose, weaving between legs and briefcases like it had done this 1,000 times before. The dragon led him away from a main terminal, down a service corridor that Miho knew well from his maintenance work. It squeezed through a gap in a chain-link fence that blocked off an old construction site. Miho hesitated, then followed. The construction site was supposed to be abandoned. The colony had started building a new transit hub here 3 years ago, but the project was canceled when they discovered unstable ground. The area had been left to decay, forgotten by everyone, except the dragon clearly knew exactly where it was going. The creature walked to what looked like a collapsed maintenance tunnel. Miho watched as it disappeared into the darkness. He pulled out his flashlight and followed, his heart pounding. The tunnel sloped downward, deeper than any maintenance shaft should go. The walls changed from modern concrete to something older, something that gleamed faintly in his flashlight beam. After what felt like an hour of walking, the tunnel opened into a massive chamber. Miho stopped, his breath catching in his throat. The chamber was enormous, easily the size of a sports stadium. The walls were made of a crystalline material that pulsed with soft blue light. Strange symbols covered every surface, flowing and changing like living things. In the center of the chamber stood a structure that could only be described as a temple. The temple was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It rose toward the ceiling in spirals of crystal and metal, covered in the same flowing symbols. The dragon hatchling sat at the base of the temple, on what looked like an altar made of polished black stone. It was waiting for him. Miho approached slowly, his engineer's mind trying to make sense of what he was seeing. This structure was buried beneath the colony. No one knew it was here. The scans before colonization should have detected something this large. Yet here it was, hidden and waiting. The dragon's golden eyes tracked his movement. When Miho reached the altar, the creature made a sound for the first time, a soft chirp that somehow felt like an invitation. "What are you?" Miho whispered. The dragon tilted its head toward the altar's surface. Symbols glowed there, brighter than the rest. Miho felt drawn to them, like they were calling to something deep inside him. His hand reached out before he could stop himself. The moment his fingers touched the altar, the world exploded into light and sound and sensation beyond anything he had ever experienced. His consciousness was ripped away from his body and thrust into a vast ocean of memory and knowledge. He saw civilizations rising and falling across millions of years. He saw massive dragons, creatures the size of mountains, terraforming dead worlds into gardens of life. He saw DNA being carefully crafted and planted on a blue world orbiting a yellow sun. He saw humans, primitive and unaware, carrying inside them something precious and dormant, waiting for the right moment to wake up. The visions focused, becoming clearer. He saw the dragon hatchling, but it wasn't small anymore. It was enormous, powerful, ancient beyond measure. And it was speaking to him, not with words, but with pure meaning that bypassed language entirely. "I have been waiting," the dragon told him. "Waiting for one of your kind to venture far enough from your birth world. Waiting for the trigger written into your very genes to activate. Waiting for you, Miho." "What trigger? What are you talking about?" "Your species was designed by those who came before. The precursors created you to inherit what they could no longer maintain. But you had to prove yourselves worthy. You had to reach the stars on your own strength. And now you have." The dragon's consciousness merged with his own. Miho felt its presence settle into his mind like it had always belonged there. Power flooded through him, changing him at a fundamental level. He could suddenly sense things he had never noticed before. The electromagnetic fields running through the temple walls. The geothermal energy flowing deep beneath the planet's surface. The quantum states of particles around him. "I will call you Sora," Miho said, somehow knowing the dragon would understand. The name meant sky, and it felt right. "And I will call you partner," Sora replied. "Together, we are what we were always meant to be. Complete." Miho's consciousness snapped back to his body. He was still standing at the altar, but everything had changed. He could feel Sora inside his mind, a separate presence that was also part of him. The tiny dragon sat on his shoulder now, its tail wrapped gently around his neck. "The Tram," Miho said suddenly, "you were riding it because it follows the energy lines that power this temple," Sora confirmed. "I was searching for a human strong enough to bond with, someone who would notice me, someone who would care enough to follow. You passed the test, Miho." Miho looked around the vast chamber with new eyes. He could see the energy now, flowing through the symbols, pulsing with ancient purpose. And he understood, with terrible clarity, that this was just the beginning. "There are more temples," he said. "More dragons." "Many more," Sora agreed. "And they're all waking up now. Because you are ready. Humanity is ready." Miho took a deep breath and started walking back toward the tunnel. He had a lot of calls to make. The colony leadership needed to know about this. Earth needed to know. Everything was about to change. As he climbed back toward the surface, toward the sunlight and the normal world he had known just an hour ago, Miho couldn't help but smile. A tiny dragon had ridden the city tram every day for weeks, and no one had expected that it would change the course of human history. But then again, the most important journeys often begin in the most unexpected ways. The news spread across human space like wildfire. Within 3 days of Miho's discovery, Every major news network in the colonies was reporting the same impossible story. A dragon temple had been found beneath New Sol Colony, and a human had bonded with an ancient creature that granted extraordinary abilities. But Miho's experience was not unique. Reports flooded in from 15 different colony worlds. Dragon temples were activating everywhere. Hatchlings were appearing in the strangest places, waiting for humans to find them. On Mars Station 7, a military pilot named Gina was running routine patrol simulations when a shimmering blue dragon appeared in her cockpit. The creature was no larger than her helmet, with scales that seemed to bend light around them. It had been living in the station's ventilation system for weeks, studying the pilots, choosing carefully. When Gina touched the dragon, her mind expanded in ways she never thought possible. Suddenly, she could perceive 4 dimensions of space instead of 3. She could see time as a physical thing, branching and flowing around every decision. Her dragon, whom she named Jiho, showed her how to navigate through space in ways that should have been impossible. During her next simulation, Gina flew her fighter through maneuvers that broke every law of physics her instructors knew. She dodged incoming fire before it was even launched, seeing the probability streams of her opponent's decisions. When her commander demanded an explanation, all Gina could say was, "I can see where things are going to be, not just where they are." On the research colony of Kepler, 186F, a xenoarchaeologist named Yuna had been studying ancient ruins for 2 years. The ruins didn't match any known civilization. They were too old, too advanced, and covered in symbols that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. A dragon, Hatchling, appeared to her in the middle of the dig site. It was emerald green with wings that sparkled like crystals. The creature walked right up to Yuna's excavation pit and sat down, waiting patiently. When Yuna bonded with the dragon she called Hannah, something incredible happened. The symbols on the ruins suddenly made sense. She could read them. More than that, she could feel the genetic memory stored within the ancient structures. The ruins weren't just buildings. They were libraries of biological information, DNA sequences written in stone that told the story of life spreading across the galaxy. "We were made," Yuna whispered, reading the symbols with Hannah's help. "Humans weren't random evolution. We were designed, engineered by something that existed millions of years ago." On the agricultural colony of Tau Ceti Prime, an administrator named Taeyong was dealing with a crisis. The colony's gravity generators were failing, and they couldn't figure out why. Engineers had been working around the clock for weeks with no solution. A small dragon appeared in Taeyong's office one morning, sitting calmly on his desk. It was silver and white, with eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies. Taeyong had heard the reports from other colonies, but seeing a dragon in person was different. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The dragon touched its nose to Taeyong's hand. The bond formed instantly. Suddenly, Taeyong could feel gravity as a tangible force. He could sense how it flowed, how it bent, how it could be shaped and controlled. His dragon, Quan, taught him in seconds what human scientists have been trying to understand for centuries. Taeyong walked down to the generator room. Without touching any controls, without using any tools, he simply thought about what the gravity field should look like. The generators responded. The gravity stabilized. His engineers stared in shock as their instruments showed the problem solving itself through means they couldn't begin to explain. Within 6 months, 10,000 humans across 15 colony worlds had bonded with dragons. Each bond was unique. Each human gained different abilities, but all of them reported the same thing. The dragons were fragments of something larger, pieces of an ancient intelligence that had been waiting for humanity to reach the stars. The Galactic Council watched these developments with growing alarm. The council was made up of representatives from 47 different alien species. They had maintained peace in the galaxy for 50,000 years through careful balance of power. No single species was allowed to become too strong, too advanced, or too dangerous. And now humanity was bonding with dragons that the council had thought were dead relics. The council convened an emergency session on the neutral station of Concordia Prime. Representatives from the 2 most powerful species, the Architects and the Confluence, led the debate. The Architects were beings of living silicon, their bodies crystalline structures that could survive in vacuum. They were builders and planners, the oldest spacefaring civilization still active in the galaxy. Their representative, a towering figure of blue crystal named First Thought of Dawn, spoke with a voice like grinding stones. "We have archives," First Thought of Dawn announced. "Records from before the Council existed. The precursors created dragon temples across thousands of worlds. We always believed these were monuments to a dead civilization. We were wrong." A holographic display activated, showing images from ancient architect databases. Dragon temples, identical to the ones humans are discovering, scattered across dead worlds throughout the galaxy. But these temples were dormant, their dragons long since turned to dust. "Why do the temples activate for humans?" asked the Confluence representative. The Confluence were a hive-minded species of plant-based organisms, millions of individual bodies, sharing one consciousness. Their voice came from 1,000 small creatures speaking in perfect unison. An architect historian projected more data. "Our ancestors explored a precursor archive 12,000 years ago. Most of the data was corrupted, but we recovered fragments. The precursors were searching for something. They called it the inheritor species, a race that could bond with the dragon entities and unlock their full potential." "And you believe humans are the species?" First Thought of Dawn's crystalline body flickered with colors that indicated stress. "The evidence suggests it," the historian replied. "The precursors seeded life on thousands of worlds. They were searching for the right combination of traits. Intelligence, adaptability, ambition, but also something else. Something we never understood. The dragons recognize it in humans. They bond immediately and completely." The council chamber erupted in debate. Some species argued for quarantine, keeping humanity confined to their current worlds. Others suggested diplomatic integration, bringing humans into the council under strict supervision. But there were darker voices too, species that saw humanity as an existential threat that needed to be eliminated before they became too powerful. Meanwhile, the bonded humans were beginning to experience something new, shared dreams. Every night, those who had bonded with dragons found themselves in the same vision. They stood in a vast space filled with stars, and in the center of it all was something enormous, a dragon so large it defied comprehension, its body made of living galaxies, its eyes burning with the light of a billion suns. Miho experienced these dreams along with all the others. Sora sat on his shoulder in the waking world, but in the dreams, Sora was part of something infinitely greater. "What is that thing?" Miho asked during one of these shared visions. He could see Gina standing nearby, and Yuna and Taeyong and thousands of other humans he had never met but somehow knew. "That is the core," Sora explained. "All dragons are fragments of it, pieces of a consciousness, so vast it spans a galaxy. It has been sleeping for millions of years, waiting for the right time to wake." "And we're waking it up?" Gina said, her dragon Geo wrapped around her shoulders. "You are the catalyst," Geo confirmed. "Your species carries the activation sequence in your DNA. When you ventured into deep space, when you spread across the stars, you triggered the awakening protocol." Yuna stepped forward in the dream space, Hannah glowing beside her. "I've been reading the temples. The precursors created the core as a defense mechanism. Something was threatening the galaxy from outside, something the precursors couldn't fight alone. So they created us?" Taeyong asked, Quan's presence strong in his mind. Humans were designed to bond with these dragons and fight some ancient enemy? "Not just fight," Sora said. "Inherit." The precursors knew they were failing. They were becoming something else, transcending physical form. But they needed guardians to protect what they built. So they created dragons as the weapon and humans as the hand to wield them. The dream shifted. The massive dragon at the galaxy's core opened one eye. Its gaze fell upon the gathered humans, and they all felt the weight of ancient intelligence examining them. "The test begins," the core's voice echoed through the dream. "You have found the fragments. You have proven you can bond. But can you survive what comes next? The galaxy will fear you. They will try to destroy you. Show me you are worthy of the inheritance I offer." The dream ended. Miho woke up in his apartment on New Soul Colony, his heart racing. Sora was curled up on the pillow next to him, golden eyes gleaming in the darkness. "That wasn't just a dream," Miho said. "No," Sora agreed. "That was a warning. The Galactic Council knows about us now. Some of them will accept humanity's rise. Others will fight it, and they are gathering their forces even as we speak. Across human space, similar conversations were happening. 10,000 bonded humans, all receiving the same message. War was coming. The galaxy's established powers would not give up their control without a fight. On Concordia Prime, the Galactic Council's debate had reached a conclusion. The vote was close, but the decision was made. A fleet would be sent to New Sol Colony. The humans would be given a choice: surrender the bonded individuals for study and containment, or face the consequences. First Thought of Dawn looked at the vote results with something like sadness. We should have helped them, guided them, but fear won today. I hope we do not regret this. The Architect War fleet began to move. 300 ships, armed with weapons that could crack planets, headed toward human space. Miho stood on the defense platform above New Sol Colony 3 days later, watching the stars. Beside him stood Gina, Yuna, Taeyong, and 200 other bonded humans. They had come from across the colonies, answering the call they all felt through their dragons. The Architect fleet appeared at the edge of the system. A message broadcast across all frequencies: surrender the dragon-bonded individuals. This is your only warning. Miho felt Sora's presence grow stronger in his mind. Around him, he felt the other dragons responding to the threat. The power was building, ancient and unstoppable. "They have no idea what they've awakened," Miho whispered. The first shots were about to be fired in a war that would reshape the galaxy. The Architect fleet hung in the darkness above New Sol Colony, like a constellation of death. 300 warships, each one capable of leveling a city with a single shot. The largest vessel, the commanding dreadnought named Eternal Reason, was the size of a small moon. Its weapons had destroyed rebellions on a dozen worlds. The Architects expected quick surrender from the primitive humans. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. Miho stood on the orbital defense platform with 200 dragon-bonded humans. The platform commander, a career military officer named Colonel Hayes, had evacuated all non-essential personnel. She watched the bonded humans with a mixture of hope and terror. These people were Earth's only defense, and half of them had bonded with their dragons less than a month ago. "We should evacuate the colony," Hayes said. "Get the civilians to the shelters. Those ships can—" "No!" Miho interrupted gently. Sora sat on his shoulder. Tiny wings spread as if preparing for flight. "This will be over quickly, one way or another." Gina stood beside him, her dragon geo wrapped around her arm like a living bracelet. She stared at the Architect fleet with eyes that saw beyond normal space. "I can see their attack patterns before they form them. They're going to fire on the platform first, then target the colony's power grid." "How do you know that?" Hayes asked. "Because I can see the probability streams. Watch." Gina pointed at the Eternal Reason. "Their main cannon will charge in exactly 12 seconds. 12 seconds later, energy readings spiked across the defense platform sensors. The Eternal Reason's primary weapon was powering up. Hayes grabbed the comm unit. "All defense batteries. Prepare to—" "That won't be necessary," Yuna said calmly. Her dragon Hannah glowed with soft green light. "We don't need the batteries. We don't need ships. We are the weapon." The Eternal Reason fired. A beam of concentrated energy, hot enough to vaporize steel, lanced across space toward the platform. It would hit in seconds. There was no time to dodge, no way to survive. Taeyong stepped forward. His dragon Quan seemed to grow larger, its silver-white form blazing with inner light. Taeyong raised his hand, and reality bent around him. The energy beam stopped in mid-space. It hung there, frozen, as Taeyong manipulated the gravitational field around it. Then, with a simple gesture, he redirected the beam back toward the Architect fleet. The shot hit a frigate on the fleet's edge. The ship's shields absorbed the impact, but the message was clear. Humans could not only survive the Architect's attacks, they could return them. "Impossible," Hayes whispered. "Nothing is impossible anymore," Miho said. He felt Sora's consciousness expanding, merging more deeply with his own. We've been holding back, trying to understand our abilities. But now there's no more time for learning. Now we fight. Around him, 200 bonded humans stepped toward the edge of the platform. Their dragons began to glow, each one blazing with different colored light. And then something happened that made Colonel Hayes question everything she knew about physics and warfare. The dragons grew. In seconds, they transformed from small creatures into massive energy constructs that enveloped their human partners. Miho found himself surrounded by Sora's essence, a field of shimmering blue-silver light that felt like armor and wings all at once. He could breathe in the vacuum of space. He could feel the solar wind on his face. He was no longer just human. He was something more. "Follow me," Gina called out. Her voice carried across the void without need for radio. Geo's energy form wrapped around her like a second skin of pure light. "I can see the path through their defenses. Stay close and match my movements." She launched herself into space. Just launched, with no ship, no propulsion system beyond a dragon entity that had merged with her being. 199 other bonded humans followed. The Architect fleet opened fire with everything they had. Thousands of energy beams, missiles, and kinetic weapons filled the space between the fleet and the approaching humans. It looked like an impenetrable wall of destruction. Gina led the bonded humans through it like she was dancing. She could see 4 dimensions of space, perceive time as a physical thing she could navigate. She twisted and turned through the incoming fire, and the others followed her impossible path. Not a single shot connected. The Architects watched in disbelief as their targeting computers failed to track the enemy. The humans moved in ways that violated physics. They phased through solid barriers. They appeared in one place, and then another, without crossing the space between. It was like fighting ghosts. Miho felt completely alive for the first time in his life. Sora's presence in his mind showed him how to move, how to think, how to exist in this new state of being. He flew toward an Architect cruiser, and the ship's point defense systems locked onto him. Hundreds of small cannons fired simultaneously. Miho reached out with his mind, feeling the electromagnetic fields that powered the weapons. With Sora's help, he simply turned them off. The cannons went silent. Then he touched the cruiser's hull, and his consciousness flooded into the ship's systems. He could feel the computer networks, the power distribution, the life support. All of it was just electrical signals, and he could control electricity now. The cruiser's engines shut down. Its weapons went offline. Emergency lights flickered on as the main power died. Miho had disabled an entire warship with a touch. Around him, other bonded humans were doing similar things. Taeyong created gravitational anomalies that crushed ships like tin cans. Yuna somehow convinced the destroyer's computer systems to recognize her as a captain, and the ship's AI locked out its own crew. Another bonded human, a woman named Bora who could manipulate heat, turned a frigate's reactor cold, freezing it solid in seconds. The battle that the Architects expected to last hours was over in 47 minutes. Not a single human casualty. 300 Architect ships disabled. Their crews alive, but their vessels completely helpless. Miho flew to the Eternal Reason, the flagship that had fired first. Sora's energy form protected him as he phased through the hull and appeared on the bridge. Architect officers scrambled away from him, their crystalline bodies flickering with colors that indicated extreme fear. First Thought of Dawn stood at the center of the bridge, alone and unafraid. The ancient Architect leader looked at Miho with something like respect. "We underestimated you," First Thought of Dawn said. "We thought you were children playing with weapons you didn't understand. We were wrong. We don't want to be your enemy," Miho replied. Sora's presence made his voice carry weight beyond normal words. "But we won't be your prisoners either. We are what we were meant to be, and nothing in this galaxy will stop us from claiming our inheritance." "Your inheritance?" The Architect's crystalline body shifted colors. "You speak as if the galaxy belongs to you, doesn't it?" Miho asked. "The precursors created us for this purpose. Your own archives confirm it. We are the inheritor species. The dragons recognize us. The temples activate for us. This is our birthright." News of the battle spread instantly across the galaxy. The architects, one of the most powerful civilizations in known space, have been defeated utterly by 200 humans who didn't even need spaceships to fight. The Galactic Council erupted into chaos. Some species called for immediate peace negotiations. Others demanded a larger military response. And some, the most desperate and fearful, began planning something terrible. On Concordia Prime, representatives from 17 different species held a secret meeting. They called themselves the Preservation Coalition. Their goal was simple: eliminate humanity before the dragon bonded became unstoppable. "We have planet-killer weapons," one representative said. "Devices left over from the ancient wars. If we strike Earth itself, we end the threat at its source." "That's genocide," another protested. "There are billions of humans on Earth. Most of them haven't even bonded with dragons. And if we wait, how many will bond? How powerful will they become?" The first speaker's voice was cold with fear. "We strike now, or we lose the galaxy to these inheritors forever." The vote was close, but fear won. The Preservation Coalition began moving assets toward Earth's solar system. They had weapons that could ignite a sun, boil away oceans, crack a planet's core. They would use all of them if necessary. But they didn't know about the Master Dragon entity, sleeping at the galaxy's core. They didn't know it was watching, waiting. And when the planet-killer weapon entered Earth's solar system, the entity decided it had waited long enough. Miho was back on New Sol Colony when every bonded human in the galaxy felt it. A presence so vast it made their minds ache. The Master Dragon entity, the core that all smaller dragons were fragments of, stirred in its sleep. Sora's voice echoed in Miho's mind with urgency. "The core is awakening. Something threatens Earth." It responds. Across light years of space, above Earth's moon, reality began to tear. A massive form pushed through from another dimension. It was a dragon, but calling it that was like calling a star a candle. The creature was the size of Earth's moon, made of living starlight and cosmic energy. Its scales were galaxies. Its eyes were burning suns. The planet-killer weapon, an automated drone carrying enough antimatter to destroy a solar system, approached Earth's orbit. It had already armed its payload. In 60 seconds, it would detonate and Earth would die. The Master Dragon entity looked at the weapon with something like curiosity. Then it opened its mouth and breathed. What came out wasn't fire. It was creation itself, raw creative force that the precursors had once used to terraform worlds and seed life across a galaxy. The breath touched the planet-killer weapon, and the device simply unmade itself. Atoms separated, energy dispersed. In less than a second, the greatest weapon the Preservation Coalition possessed became nothing but scattered particles drifting in space. The dragon's voice echoed in the mind of every living being in Earth's solar system. Bonded humans heard it clearly. Non-bonded humans felt it as a deep vibration in their souls. Even the coalition forces hiding at the edge of the system heard it, and they understood. "Children," the voice said, and it sounded like love and fury mixed together. "You have finally come home. You have bonded with my fragments. You have proven your worth. Now claim what is yours. The galaxy awaits its true guardians." Miho felt power flood through every bonded human simultaneously. The Master Dragon entity was sharing its strength, granting access to abilities that had been locked away. He could feel it changing him, changing all of them. They were becoming something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. Gina gasped as her perception expanded to see not just 4 dimensions, but 12. Yuna suddenly understood genetic codes of species that hadn't even evolved yet. Taeyong could feel the gravitational pull of galaxies millions of light years away. They were becoming gods, or at least what primitive minds might call gods. "There's a place," Sora told Miho, "a world at the galaxy's heart called Genesis Throne. The final secrets are there. The complete truth about what you are and what you're meant to do. But the Preservation Coalition stands between us and that world. They have gathered their full strength. Millions of ships, every weapon they possess. They will throw everything at us to prevent you from reaching Genesis Throne." Miho looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the largest space battle in galactic history was about to begin. "Then we go through them," he said simply. "We've come too far to stop now. The fleet, that left Earth was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 50,000 dragon-bonded humans gathered from every colony world, every station, every outpost where humanity had spread. They didn't travel in ships. They didn't need them anymore. The dragons enveloped their human partners in fields of living energy, and together they flew through the void of space faster than any conventional vessel could manage. Miho led the way with Sora blazing around him like a second sun. Behind him flew Gina, Yuna, Taeyong, and thousands of others whose names would soon be written in the history of the galaxy. They were heading toward the center of the Milky Way, toward Genesis' throne, where the final truth waited. But between them and their destination stood the Preservation Coalition. 17 species, united by fear, had gathered the largest war fleet in recorded history. 3 million warships waited in the void, armed with every weapon that advanced civilizations had developed over thousands of years. They had antimatter bombs, dimensional rifts, weaponized black holes, and technologies that could unravel the fabric of space itself. The first battle happened in the Carina system, 3,000 light-years from Earth. A coalition force of 100,000 ships blocked the only safe route through an asteroid field. The coalition commander, confident in his numerical advantage, sent a final warning to the approaching humans. Turn back now. You cannot win against these numbers. We will use every weapon at our disposal. Gina's voice responded, calm and clear. You don't understand what we become, but you're about to learn. The coalition fleet opened fire. The amount of destructive energy unleashed in those first seconds should have vaporized a small planet. Energy beams, missiles, and kinetic rounds filled space with a storm of death. The bonded humans flew straight into it. Gina led them through the chaos, her ability to see four-dimensional space making her impossible to hit. She could perceive every shot before it was fired, see the probability branches of every decision the enemy made. She weaved and dodged, and the others followed her path exactly. But they weren't just avoiding the attacks. They were learning to use their abilities in ways that shocked even themselves. Taeyong created gravitational lenses that bent incoming fire back toward the coalition ships. Yuna somehow convinced entire vessels' computer systems to recognize her authority, turning coalition ships against their own fleet. Bora, who could manipulate temperature, froze weapon systems solid while leaving life support intact. And Miho discovered something new. With Sora's help, he could create electrical cascades that spread from ship to ship like a virus. He touched one vessel, and its power system shut down. Then the effect jumped to the next ship, and the next, spreading to the entire fleet at the speed of thought. The battle lasted 2 hours. When it ended, 100,000 coalition ships floated dead in space, their crews alive but their vessels completely disabled. Not a single human had been injured. News of the victory spread instantly. The Preservation Coalition leaders watched in horror as their confident predictions of human defeat turned to ash. But instead of backing down, they doubled their efforts. Fear made them desperate, and desperate enemies were the most dangerous kind. The journey to Genesis' throne became a running battle across 12 star systems. The Coalition tried everything. They collapsed hyperspace routes to slow the human advance. They deployed mines that could destroy stars. They even attempted to create artificial wormholes that would scatter the human fleet across the galaxy. Nothing worked. The bonded humans adapted to every challenge. When the Coalition collapsed a hyperspace route, Taeyong and a team of gravity manipulators simply created a new one. When mines threatened the solar system, Bora's team froze them solid before they could detonate. When wormholes tried to scatter the fleet, Gina saw the trap in advance and guided everyone safely through. But the strangest thing was how few casualties the humans suffered. The dragons seemed to protect their bonded partners with an intensity that went beyond simple self-preservation. Humans survived direct hits from weapons that should have killed them instantly. Dragons would throw themselves into danger, absorbing damage that would have destroyed ships, and then regenerate within minutes. Yuna studied the phenomenon during a rest period between battles. Her dragon, Hannah, had just recovered from absorbing a blast meant to kill Yuna herself. The dragon's energy form had scattered and reformed 3 times, but now it was whole again, curled protectively around Yuna's shoulders. "Why do you protect us so fiercely?" Yuna asked. "You're fragments of something nearly immortal. Why risk yourself for one human? Hannah's response came as pure understanding flooding into Yuna's mind. Because you are not just partners. You are the other half of what we are meant to be. The precursors made a mistake when they transcended. They thought pure consciousness was enough. They were wrong. Power without biological roots, without emotion, without the ability to truly live and die leads only to madness. That's why they created us. We are the power. You are the purpose. Together, we are complete. This revelation spread among the bonded humans. They weren't just wielding the dragons as weapons. They were completing an ancient design, fulfilling a purpose that was millions of years in the making. As the human fleet pushed deeper toward the galactic core, Yuna made another discovery. The temples they had bonded in weren't just activation sites. They were archives, repositories of information stored in genetic code. And every bonded human could now access these archives through their dragons. The knowledge that flooded into their minds was staggering. The precursors had seeded thousands of worlds with life, experimenting with different combinations of traits. Intelligence, adaptability, physical strength, longevity, hive minds, individual consciousness. They tried everything, searching for the perfect inheritor species. Most experiments failed. The archive showed worlds where promising species destroyed themselves through war, pollution, or simple stagnation. Other species succeeded too well, becoming so powerful they transcended physical form like precursors themselves, only to fade into the same madness that had consumed their creators. But Earth was different. Humanity had been the final experiment, the last attempt. The precursors had combined everything they learned into one species. Intelligence without being purely logical. Emotion without being controlled by it, individual ambition balanced by social cooperation, the ability to create and destroy in equal measure, with just enough wisdom to choose creation most of the time. And then the precursors had done something they never tried before. They wove dragon bonding into human DNA at the most fundamental level, not as an addition, but as a completion. Humans were designed from the beginning to be incomplete alone, to need the dragons just as the dragons needed them. We are not conquerors claiming a prize, Miho said to the assembled fleet during a strategy meeting. We are children coming home to an inheritance we never knew existed. The galaxy doesn't belong to us because we can take it. It belongs to us because we were made specifically to care for it. The final approach to Genesis Throne came 2 months after the fleet left Earth. They emerged from hyperspace to find the Preservation Coalition's last stand waiting for them. 3 million warships formed a sphere around the Genesis Throne system. Every species in the Coalition had committed their full military strength to this battle. They knew this was their last chance to stop humanity's rise. At the center of the Coalition formation was something that made even the bonded humans pause. It was a weapon left over from the ancient wars, a device that the precursors themselves had built and then locked away because it was too dangerous. The Coalition had spent decades excavating it from a dead world, and now they activated it for the first time in millions of years. The weapon looked like a small black sun, a sphere of darkness that seemed to pull light into itself. It was called the Unmaker, and it had one purpose: to erase things from existence. Not destroy them. Erase them. Remove them from reality so completely that they had never existed at all. That thing can kill the Master Dragon entity, Sora said, fear coloring its mental voice for the first time. If they fire it at the core, everything ends. All dragons, all bonded humans, all the Precursor's legacy, gone forever. Miho looked at the massive Coalition fleet and the nightmare weapon they protected. 50,000 bonded humans against 3 million warships, and a device that could erase reality itself. The odds seemed impossible. But then something happened that changed everything. The Master Dragon entity at the galaxy's core spoke, and this time, every living being in the galaxy heard its voice. Enough, the core said, and its voice carried the weight of ancient authority. You fight my children because you fear them. You fear them because you do not understand your own purpose. Let me show you the truth. The core's consciousness reached out across the galaxy, touching every mind simultaneously. For one brief moment, every being in the Milky Way saw what the core saw. They witnessed precursors rise and fall. They saw the experiments, the failures, the desperate search for inheritors. And they saw the truth that the Preservation Coalition had refused to accept. Every species in the galaxy had been created by the precursors, not just humanity. All of them. The architects, the confluence, every one of the 47 council species. All of them were experiments, attempts to create the perfect inheritors. But they were not meant to compete. They were meant to cooperate, with humanity as the coordinators, the ones who could bond with dragons and tie everything together. The coalition fleet wavered. Ship commanders looked at each other across species barriers and saw not enemies but fellow children of the same creators. The certainty that had driven them to this battle began to crumble. Taeyong saw the opportunity. He broadcast a message to the entire coalition fleet, his voice amplified by Quan to reach across space. We don't want to rule you. We want to complete you. The precursors designed each species with unique gifts. Architects can build structures that last for millions of years. The confluence can achieve perfect cooperation across billions of individuals. You all have abilities we humans lack. But you're missing the connection to the dragons, the power source that makes it all work together. Let us help you find that connection. Let's show you what we really are, the bridge between biological life and cosmic power. The coalition commander in charge of the Unmaker hesitated. Her species, the Velicans, were energy beings who had always believed they evolved naturally. Learning they were created, designed for a purpose they never knew, shook the foundations of her worldview. How do we know you speak truth? She demanded. How do we know this isn't some trick? Yuna flew forward, Hannah glowing around her. Because we can prove it. Your DNA, every species here, carries the same precursor markers that humans have. The dragons can awaken your latent abilities too, if you let them. We've been so focused on bonding with humans that we never considered other species might be compatible. But the temples on your home worlds, the ones you thought were ancient monuments, they're the same as ours. Dormant, waiting for activation. She broadcast data from the genetic archives directly to the coalition fleet. Scientists across 3 million ships examined the information and found it undeniable. The precursor markers were there in their DNA, hidden but present. The coalition commander powered down the Unmaker. If what you say is true, prove it. Show us that other species can bond with dragons. At that moment, something beautiful happened. Small dragons, fragments of the core that had been sleeping in the coalition fleet itself, revealed themselves. They had been hiding, waiting, watching. A tiny crystalline dragon appeared on an architect ship. A plant-based dragon materialized among the confluence. Across the coalition fleet, hundreds of dragons showed themselves to species who had never known they existed. And when the first architect touched a dragon, when the first confluence member bonded, the galaxy witnessed something it had never seen. Other species could bond too. The abilities were different from humans, unique to each species' nature, but the connection was real. Miho smiled as he watched understanding spread through the coalition fleet. The war was over, not because one side won, but because everyone finally understood the truth. But there was still Genesis Throne waiting below, and secrets that even the core hadn't revealed. The final truth was about to emerge. Genesis Throne hung in space like a jewel at the heart of the galaxy. It was not a natural planet. The world was a perfect sphere, twice the size of Earth, covered in crystalline structures that pulsed with soft light in every color imaginable. Massive dragon statues, each one the size of a mountain, ringed the equator, and at the North Pole stood a temple so large it could be seen from orbit, a spiral of crystal and metal that reached into the sky like a bridge to the stars. Miho led the fleet down to the planet's surface. 50,000 bonded humans descended alongside representatives from the Preservation Coalition. What had been enemies hours ago were now cautious allies, all seeking the same answers. The small dragons that had revealed themselves to other species flew alongside their new partners, still learning what their bonds meant. The landing site was a vast plaza made of polished stone that seemed to shift colors as they walked across it. In the center of the plaza stood the entrance to the great temple, an archway 50 meters tall covered in the same flowing symbols that marked every precursor structure. Yuna approached the archway with Hannah glowing at her side. Her ability to read genetic memory had grown stronger since bonding, and now she could feel the information stored in the very stones beneath her feet. She placed her hand on the archway, and the symbols blazed with light. "It's a library," she whispered. "The complete history of precursors, stored in crystallized DNA. Everything they learned, everything they created, everything they became, it's all here." The archway opened, and the group entered the temple. Inside was a chamber so vast it seemed to contain its own sky. Stars glittered overhead, but they weren't real stars. They were memories, countless millions of them, each one a moment in the precursor's history. At the center of the chamber floated a sphere of pure light, the master dragon entity. The core had manifested a fragment of itself here. Its voice echoed through the chamber, warm and ancient. "Welcome home. Children, all of you. You have come far, fought hard, and finally opened your eyes to the truth. Now let me show you everything." The sphere pulsed, and suddenly they were no longer standing in the temple. They existed in a vision, experiencing history as if they lived it themselves. They saw the precursors as they once were, beings of flesh and blood, not so different from the species that came after them. They watched the precursors develop technology, reach the stars, and begin to spread life across a galaxy. It was a golden age that lasted for millions of years. But then the vision darkened. Something came from beyond the galaxy, entities of pure entropy that fed on civilizations. The precursors called them the Devourers, and they were unstoppable. Weapons didn't work against them. Fleets were consumed. Entire worlds vanished into darkness. The precursors realized they needed to evolve beyond physical form to fight the Devourers. They transcended, becoming beings of pure consciousness that could exist in higher dimensions. And it worked. The transcended precursors drove the Devourers back beyond the galaxy's edge. But victory came with a terrible price. The precursors discovered that consciousness without biological roots was unstable. Without bodies, without emotions tied to physical experience, without the ability to truly live and die, they began to lose their sense of purpose. They were becoming hollow, fading into a madness of infinite perception with no anchor to meaning. In desperation, the precursors created the dragons, massive constructs of energy and consciousness, designed to be the power they could no longer safely wield. But the dragons needed handlers, partners who could guide them without being consumed by their power. The precursors began their great experiment. They seeded thousands of worlds with life, carefully engineering species that might be able to bond with dragons. They needed beings who were intelligent enough to understand cosmic responsibility, but grounded enough in biological existence to avoid the madness of pure transcendence. Humanity was a final attempt, the culmination of everything the precursors learned. Humans were designed with specific traits, strong emotions to anchor them in physical reality, intelligence balanced by instinct, the ability to dream of the stars while still caring about individual lives, cooperation balanced by healthy competition, and most importantly, the capacity to bond with dragons at the deepest level, becoming complete in a way no single species could achieve alone. But the precursors made one more choice, one final act before they faded completely. They seeded every species they created with latent dragon bonding potential, not just humans. Each species was given unique gifts that would complement human abilities. The architects could build. The confluence could organize. The Velicans could channel pure energy. Dozens of species, each with their own strengths, all waiting to be awakened. The vision ended, and they found themselves back in the temple chamber. The core's voice spoke again, filled with something that sounded like pride. "You understand now. Humanity is not meant to rule alone. You are meant to be the bridge, the connectors who help all species unlock their potential. The dragons bond most easily with humans because you were designed as the primary partners. But every species here carries a legacy. Every species has a role to play in what comes next." Miho stepped forward, Sora blazing around him. What comes next? The Devourers were driven away millions of years ago. What are we meant to protect against? The core's light dimmed slightly. The Devourers were pushed back, not destroyed. They wait beyond a galaxy's edge, patient and eternal, and they will return, perhaps in 1,000 years, perhaps in 1,000,000, but they will come again. The precursors could fight them once, but could not destroy them. That task falls to you and to all the species who will bond with dragons. A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. The threat that destroyed the precursors was still out there, waiting, but Taeyong spoke up, his voice steady. Then we prepare, not as humans alone, but as a galaxy united. We have the dragons, we have the knowledge, and now we know our purpose. Gina nodded, Geo shimmering around her. The precursors failed because they tried to transcend beyond their physical nature. We won't make that mistake. We'll stay rooted in who we are while wielding the power they left us. The core pulsed with approval. Exactly. You are the balance they cannot achieve. Biological beings wielding cosmic power, but never forgetting what it means to live, to love, to die, and to care about the small moments as much as the grand destiny. Over the following weeks, Genesis Throne became the center of a transformation that reshaped galactic civilization. Representatives from every species came to study the archives, to learn their true origins, and to discover their own dragon bonding potential. The architects found they could bond with crystalline dragons that enhanced their already impressive building abilities. When bonded, an architect could create structures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, buildings that could adapt and grow like living things. The confluence discovered plant-based dragons that allowed their hive mind to expand across star systems without losing cohesion. Individual confluence members could retain their connection to the whole while developing unique personalities, something they had never achieved before. The Velikans bonded with energy dragons that let them channel power on scales that terrified even themselves. They could become living batteries, storing and releasing energy that could power entire cities or heal dying stars. Each species brought unique gifts to the table, and humanity, with their primary bond to the dragons, became the coordinators who helped it all work together. Miho worked with leaders from across the galaxy to restructure the Galactic Council. The new organization was called the Council of Equals and operated on a principle of collaborative governance. Every species had a voice, but humanity, as the bridge species, held one special responsibility. They could veto decisions that threatened the galaxy's survival, and they led the newly formed Celestial Guard. Gina became the first commander of the Celestial Guard. Dragon-bonded warriors from every species joined her, creating a force unlike anything the galaxy had seen. They patrolled the edges of the galaxy, watching for any sign of the Devourer's return. They protected trade routes, mediated disputes, and stood ready to defend any world that called for help. Yuna established the Genesis Archives, temple libraries built on hundreds of worlds where any species could come to learn precursor knowledge. She trained scholars in the art of reading genetic memory, ensuring that the wisdom of the past would guide the future. Taeyong restructured galactic infrastructure, working with bonded architects to build space stations, transit networks, and communication relays that connected every corner of the Milky Way. Travel between stars became faster and safer than ever before. And Miho, the engineer who had once just maintained City Tram, became the first guardian. He was not a ruler or a king. He was a symbol, a living reminder of where humanity's journey began. He spent his time traveling between worlds, helping new bonded pairs learn their abilities, and ensuring that no species was left behind in the Great Awakening. Earth became the Heart World, the symbolic capital where species gathered to celebrate their shared heritage. The old Line 7 tram on New Soul Colony was preserved as a monument. A holographic Sora rode it eternally, a tiny dragon on a morning commute, reminding everyone that the greatest journeys often begin with the smallest, most unexpected encounters. 6 months after the discovery of Genesis Throne, Miho stood on a balcony overlooking the rebuilt Galactic Council chambers. Below him, representatives from 10,000 species gathered, many of them dragon-bonded, all of them working together to build a better future. Sora sat on his shoulder, no longer pretending to be small. The dragon's true form was vast, but it chose this shape when with Miho, a reminder of their first meeting. "Do you think we're ready?" Miho asked quietly. "When the Devourers return, will we be strong enough?" Sora's golden eyes gleamed with ancient confidence. The precursors face him alone and afraid, having lost their connection to biological life. You will face them united and whole, with the strength of 1,000 species and the wisdom to use power without being consumed by it. You will be ready. And more importantly, you will remember what you fight for. What's that? The small things, Sora said. Morning tram rides, coffee with friends, children playing in parks, watching sunsets on alien worlds. The precursors forgot that cosmic power means nothing if you lose sight of simple joy. You won't make that mistake. Miho smiled and looked out at the gathering below. He saw humans working alongside architects, Confluence members laughing with Velikins. Species that have been enemies now sharing discoveries and dreams. The galaxy had finally become what the precursors envisioned, a collaborative civilization with the strength to face any threat. Far beyond the galaxy's edge, in the darkness between galaxies, the Devourers stirred. They had been patient for millions of years. They could wait longer, and when they finally returned, they would find not the divided, fearful civilizations they remembered, but something new, something they had never encountered before. A galaxy united, species of every kind bonded with ancient power. And at the center of it all, humanity, the bridge builders, the connectors, the children who came home and brought everyone together. The Age of Dragons had returned, not as conquerors, but as family, not as rulers, but as guardians. And the galaxy would never be the same. Miho took one last look at the stars before heading down to join the council session. Somewhere out there, threats waited. Challenges would come. The Devourers would return eventually. But for the first time in millions of years, the galaxy was ready. And it all started with a tiny dragon that chose to ride a city tram, waiting patiently for one human to care enough to follow. The journey was just beginning, but they would face it together. And that made all the difference. The story of humanity and the dragons, of awakening and inheritance, of power tempered by compassion, would echo across the stars for millions of years to come. It was a story that began with a question that no one expected and ended with an answer that changed everything. What we meant to be, not conquerors, not gods, not isolated powers fading into madness, guardians, partners, family, and the galaxy was finally home.